Hello students, today I want to talk to you about the simple past and the present perfect. And we're going to review the three main differences that we find between these two tenses. So the first difference talk about the simple past being an action or actions or events that happen in the past and they have no connection with the present. They're done. For example, I can say I studied English in my country for 3 years. That means I studied in my country and I'm not studying English anymore. However, the present perfect talks about an action or actions or events that started in the past, are true now, they continue at the present time, and they may continue in the future. For example, I can say, I have studied English in the US for the past 3 years. That means that I started studying English 3 years ago, I study English today, and I may continue in the future. The second difference says that the simple past talks about actions or events that happened at a specific time in the past. This is the key word. It is specific time in the past. For example, I can say, I lived in Miami in 2001. When did I live in Miami? In 2001. This is a specific time, okay? The present perfect talks about actions or events that happen at an unspecified time in the past. The time is not specific. That's why we have unspecified time in the past. For example, I can say, I have lived in Miami. But in this case, I am not telling you when I lived in Miami. It's not telling you the specific time. So in that case, I am not going to use the simple past. I can say, I went to Mexico 10 years ago. I'm telling you when I went, 10 years ago. But if I use the present perfect, I would say, I have been to Mexico. Okay? The final difference talk about how in the simple past the actions or events happen in a period of time that is finished. For example, I can use 3 months ago, yesterday. If we're talking in the afternoon and I say this morning, then the morning is finished. And the example here says, I worked for 2 hours this morning. Morning is finished. Okay? I can also say I worked 2 hours this morning. The morning is finished. We're talking in the afternoon. Nothing to do with the present. Or I can say I worked for 6 months last year. So last year, for how long did I work? I worked for 6 months. Okay, last year is finished. The present perfect talks about actions or events that happen in a period of time that is not finished yet. This year is not finished. Let's say I'm teaching this class in the morning and the morning is not finished, then I can say this morning. Today is not finished. This month, this week, right? They're not finished yet. So the example says, I have worked 2 hours so far this morning. I can also say, I have worked for 2 hours so far this morning. It is still morning, and I may still work more hours. The morning is not finished in this sentence, okay? The example I just gave you. In the second sentence, it says, I have worked for 6 months this year. Is this year finished? Not yet. That's why I'm using the present perfect. So, in conclusion, here are the main differences. The simple past talks about events that have no connection to the present or the future. They're past. You also need to specify, in number 2, the simple past says, you must specify the time when the event happened. In 1990, 10 years ago, yesterday, last night. And number 3, for the simple past says, this action or event is finished. Okay? In the present perfect, number 1 says, the event has some connection to the present and possibly the future. Number 2 says, We don't know when the event happened. So you're not giving me the specific time when the event happened. It happened in the past, but we're not telling when it happened. And for number 3, this action or event is not finished yet. So we're talking about something that may continue in the future. It's kind of like number 1. So let's look at how we form the simple past and how we form the present perfect. This is very important. You need to learn the verbs. So remember, we have regular and irregular verbs. Regular verbs, you just need to add ed. Very easy. Walked. So walk, walked. Work, worked, etc. For the irregular verbs, you have to memorize them. We have 3 columns. The column blue and then 2 whites. For the simple past, which we're using today, and the past participle, we need to decide, we need to memorize these verbs, okay? So for the simple past, I will show you how we use this column. And when do we use the past participle? We use it for present perfect. All this column, we use it for present perfect and past perfect as well. So let's see how we form them. For a sentence, so if we have a simple past sentence, it's very simple. We just need a subject and a verb, okay? So that second column, right? Now, depends if my verb is regular. I say, I walk every day, but yesterday I walked. Now, irregular verbs, remember you have to memorize them. This is an irregular verb, and we have the verb to be. So I say, I was in class yesterday, or she was in class, or we were in class yesterday. For the verb have, I have a house, I had a house. That means I don't have it anymore. For the verb go, we use went, see, saw, etc. So you have to memorize them. I can say, I ate at In-N-Out last night. She drove to school last night. Okay? I ate at In-N-Out. So if I ask you, where did you eat last night? Oh, I ate at In-N-Out. For the present perfect, I need to have a subject. Then I'm going to have either have or has, depending on my subject. And then I'm going to have my verb using the past participle. So remember, we had 3 columns. The blue was for the simple present. Then we have the simple past. And now we're going to use the 3rd column, okay? So if my verb, for example, is have, I use had. Go, I will say gone. See, seen. Eat, eaten. Drive, driven, etc. So again, for the regular verbs, I will say she has walked many times, okay? But if I want to use one of the irregular verbs, I would have to use she has driven a car many times, or I have eaten. So remember, have or has, depending on my subject. Right here I have I or she. So if we have we would say we have eaten. They have eaten. He has driven. Okay, depending on your subject, you either add have or has, but always use the 3rd column of your verb, and then the rest of the sentence. Now, how do we form questions? In the simple past, we have 2 ways. One is for the verb to be. So if my subject, for example, is I was, I will say, was I at the movies last night? If the subject is you, I'm going to say, were you at the movies last night? Or maybe I can say, were they at the movies? Were we at the movies last night? Okay, so that's only for the verb to be, letter A. But if I have any other verb, regular or irregular verb, any other verb will have to start with did. Okay, did you eat? Okay, then I use the base form of the verb. Remember the verbs I showed you. There was a list of verbs that show the blue. Then that's the base of the form. So here you will use the base of the form is that blue column. So, did you eat? Did you go? Did you sleep? Did you drive? I don't say did you drove, right? So, did you eat dinner last night? Did you? And then you put the verb in the base form. We don't conjugate the verb. For the present perfect, we don't have two forms. Here we have the letter A and B. Now, everything for every verb is always the same. We start the question with have or has, depending on my subject. So if I have he, because it's he has, I'm going to say, has he ever, and then I need to use the third column, eaten, gone, driven, okay? When do I use have? I have, we have, you have. So for those subjects, I'm going to use have to start my question. Have I ever driven a car? Have you ever eaten at In-N-Out? Has she ever eaten sushi? Etc. Okay? The last thing we're going to talk about is for negative sentences. How do we form negative sentences? For the simple past, we have two different ways again. One is for the verb to be, only the verb to be. I will say, I was not here last night. Or she was not here last night. Or they were not here last night. Okay? And that's for the question. Maybe I can ask you, were you here last night? No, I was not here. Was she here last night? No, she was not here. But for any other verb, I ask the question. When I ask, this is a negative sentence, but I ask a question, did she go to the movies? No, she did not. So in that case, I use the subject, then I need to say did not or didn't, plus the base form of the verb. Remember, the base form is that blue column that I show you. So I can say, she did not or didn't come to school last night. I didn't come to school last night. We didn't come to school last night. Okay, for all of them, we will say did not or didn't plus the base of the form. I'm not going to say she did not came, she did not went. We don't conjugate the verb. Okay, it's the base form of the verb, that blue column that I show you. Now, for the present perfect, is the same for all the verbs. It's a little bit easier, I would say. So we have a subject, and then we need to decide, depending on my subject, if I use have or has. Then I need to add the word not or never, and then I add the third column of the verb, like driven, eaten, etc. So in this case, I have the verb I, so I put have, I have, and then I can say not or never. I have never, or I have not, or I haven't. All of those are the same. I have never eaten at In-N-Out. I have not eaten at In-N-Out. I haven't eaten at In-N-Out. I haven't driven a car. I have never driven a car. I have not driven a car. Okay? And in this case, we have she has never been to school. Okay, that's the verb to be. Or I can say we have not or haven't eaten yet. If we have we use have. So we conjugate depending on the subject. Then we use have or has. Then we use not in the past participle. If we want to use never, I cannot say I have not never been to Mexico. That's not correct. I either use not or never. Okay? Now, we're going to talk about some key words for each verb tense. And my recommendation would be for you to write a sentence with every single word. So for example, with the simple past, you can say, yesterday I went to the movies. I went to the movies yesterday. Last night, I went to the movies. I went to the movies last night. I got married 10 years ago. I moved to the US 1 year ago. In 1990, I had a baby. On September 12th, my baby girl was born. At 5 p.m. last night, she got married. Try to practice this with the simple past. Write a couple of sentences. Make sure you practice writing on a piece of paper, writing one sentence for each word. So, for example, use maybe study English, or maybe you can use move to the US, right? When you move to the US. So you can say, I have lived in the US since 2000. I have lived in the US for 1 year. So since is the time. Since the time you moved to the US, or for the length, for how long you have done something. I have driven a car since I was a teenager. I have driven a car for many years, for the length, for 10 years. Already, I have eaten dinner already. Something positive already happened. No, I haven't eaten dinner yet. We use it with something negative. Ever, we use it for a question. Have you ever eaten sushi? The answer can be no. I have never eaten sushi, and you can add the word before. Maybe you're eating sushi for the first time. You can say, I have never eaten sushi before, but this is going to be your first time. Okay? Or you can say, yes, I have eaten sushi several times or many times. Okay? Oh, do you have any questions? If you have questions, make sure you take notes, and I'll see you in class next week. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. Bye.